Hello, and welcome to our third and final behind-the-scenes episode of Ghost Inspectors. My name is Gino. I'm a co-producer, and today I'm with Victoria, the writer, director, and producer of Ghost Inspectors. And today we are going to be talking about sound design, specifically
Woo!
us doing it for the show. Why? How we do? Did we do good? Did you like it? Leave a
Hopefully.
comment down below if you liked it. First, before we start our qualifications, what are our backgrounds? Victoria, what is your background in sound design? Why should the people trust us?
That's a great question. I went to school for it, so technically, I didn't get a degree in sound design, but when I was in college, I took a lot of sound design classes because I had a really strong interest in audio and sound design, and so I learned a lot through that, and then I basically started working in audio dramas professionally before I graduated. So I have been working in audio dramas for about 6 years. As soon as I graduated, I started working for Wayland Productions, and that's kind of where I got my start. I've edited shows like We're Alive Descendants, We're Alive Scouts Honor, also a few things for Audible like Slayers, a Buffyverse story, and a whole bunch of other things. So that's really how I got involved in not only sound design, but also producing and audio dramas in general. What about you, Gino? I know our journeys are similar, but
Yeah, it's the same. It's the same one. We did the same thing.
we both went to school and then we worked for Wayland Productions, and now we're here making our own shows.
Yes, I still work for Wayland Productions. I'm still working on We're Live and other projects like that. And then this on the side
Woo!
for fun. So there's a lot of information about sound design out there, I'm assuming. But the thing that makes Ghost Inspectors special is the ghost sound effects, all of the specific effects that we had to make for the ghosts, all the specific effects we had to make for the ghosts touching things or passing through things, the decisions about whether the ghost should have footsteps, stuff like that. And Victoria, you did the vast majority, if not all, of the ghost specific sound effects. Do you want to talk about the process of coming up with those and deciding, what should sound like this, what should sound like that, what should sound at all?
Yeah. I guess I'll address footsteps first because I think we had a few people interested in why we decided to give the ghost footsteps. And at first, when we were writing the show, we did joke like, oh, it'd be great if the ghosts don't have footsteps because then we don't have to do footsteps at all. That makes our sound design so much faster. Like, we don't have to worry about what surface they're walking on or anything like that. We ultimately decided to still have the ghosts have footsteps because it's for clarity's sake in audio because you don't see the characters moving unless they have footsteps or something to ground them. It's really difficult to tell like who's walking into a room, where are they walking somewhere, are they just standing in place talking. Sometimes I like to use footsteps sort of like blocking, where if the characters are having a conversation, having them stand up or sit down at key moments can sort of help tie what they're saying to specific emotion. Like if they're sitting down, it might mean like, oh, they've sort of resigned themselves to a decision or something. Like it can really vary per scene, but that's just an example of how I like to use footsteps. So we decided that the ghosts would have footsteps mainly for that reason, but also because a key element of at least the first episode is that the ghosts don't know that they're ghosts, right? And so if they didn't have footsteps or things grounding them, it would be pretty obvious from the get-go that they're dead, right? If they suddenly don't sound like anything. And also, story-wise, later in the series, they do learn how to interact with objects. Giving them footsteps and giving them some sort of tangible link to the physical world also sort of hints to the fact that later on they can pick things up or they learn how to sit in cars, like it's not entirely impossible for them to do those things.
We also looked at some other ghost media during our research phase, and there's a bunch of TV shows where all the characters are ghosts, and they make noises when they walk and fall down and sit on things, so why can't our ghosts?
Yeah, I think it really varies. Like, you have shows where the ghosts are fully floating and incorporeal, and so it makes sense that they wouldn't have footsteps there. But for our show, we decided to go for a more grounded approach
Hmm.
to how the ghosts look and feel. And then when it came to designing even more supernatural elements, like the ghost phasing through things, or I guess you can talk about possession, Gino, but
Mm.
because you designed that mostly. But at least for the whooshes and the phasing, I took point on that mainly because it was like the earlier in the episodes, and that's how we split up the workload. But the key thing I wanted to focus on with phasing is that when the ghosts phase through walls or doors or cars, they actually feel the material that they're phasing through. So when they're phasing through a car, they can feel the metal versus when they phase through a door, maybe it's more wood or a little bit of glass in there. So when I did the warping effect of the phasing, actually incorporated either like metal creaks when they were phasing through a car or wood sort of like creaking, crackling when they're phasing through doors, just to sort of hint at, again, that ultimately when if they focus in on the material that they're phasing through or interacting with, that's how they can pick up the object. So I had a lot of fun designing that, even though perhaps many people might not pick up on it. They might just accept, like, oh, this is because I still like, I wanted to keep the base layer the same because otherwise it gets confusing if you're changing how the whooshes sound too much. So I guess my philosophy for like developing sounds like this is have a base layer that is sort of the same throughout, but add in elements that can help vary the sound just like subtly so that people pick up on the differences between like different locations. It's sort of similar to when you're designing the ambiance for different locations. You want places to sound a bit more distinct from each other so that people recognize when they're in that place again.
Yeah. For most media, sound design is about being unnoticeable. You're supposed to blend into the background and make the experience of enjoying the thing feel better. Most people won't notice really great sound design, but they will notice
Mhm.
bad sound design. But in audio drama, because it's all we have, it's okay to emphasize the sound a little more. It's okay to design it in a way where it stands out amongst the voices instead of blending in behind the voices. That being said, you shouldn't make your sound design like annoying or painful
Yeah.
to listen to because it hurts. Because when all you have is sound, if it's annoying, you really feel that it's annoying. I guess we could talk about this now. The possession sequences. My absolute favorite scenes to design are anything weird. So flashbacks, hallucinations, possession, anything where we're taken out of like a normal soundscape of like a room or like the street or whatever, and we're put into somewhere more incorporeal, more fluid, where I can play with echoes and delay and reverb and stuff like that. So the possession I really played with having both the possessed and the possessee's voices kind of overlapping and talking together. We decided that was too confusing because what's going on there? But I really enjoy those more experimental scenes. And I think that's where audio drama really stands out because that's where you can really not hold back on your sound design and it works.
You did, though, get a chance to overlap the voices in the final confrontation when Mulligan possesses Adam, and it was so cool how you did it because you ended up taking, like, a bunch of Adam's takes and, like, panning them left and right so that it really feels like you're in his head, which is kind of unsettling, but it's perfect for that scene. Did that idea come from a certain place, or were you just kinda playing around with things?
I just like it when lots of people say the same thing at the same time. I think it's fun. I use that a lot in other projects too, where you have multiple characters or multiple takes of the same actor
Mhm.
sort of playing over each other. I will like stretch and distort the actors' performances a little bit so it matches more closely. but I think it creates a really interesting effect when you have a actor giving two different takes with two different levels of emotion and then playing at the same time. It becomes very disorienting, which when you're inside someone's head fighting for your life, I think that works. But we didn't want to introduce that too early. Like when you create a confusing piece of sound design, it often helps to sort of build in complexity throughout the show.
Mm.
So when we start with the possession, we just start with a big possessy, whooshy sound effect, and then the characters explain what's going on or discover what's going on. And then later, for more complicated possessions, then we introduce the sort of voices spinning around the head or the underwater vibe.
Mhm.
So the audience has a base of understanding and then moves into a more complex level of understanding. Does that
Yeah,
make
for
sense?
sure. Yeah, yeah. No, that totally makes sense. I mean, also with writing, you kind of have to like introduce like, oh, first Mulligan discovers that she can possess people. Obviously, the first time she does it is not gonna be the greatest experience because she has no idea what she's doing, but she needs to do that so that when she possesses Adam at a moment where it's much more crucial that she does it correctly, she knows what's going on, and also the audience understands what's happening. So similarly, kind of like the writing and the sound design work hand in hand. And also at that moment, then the listener also understands that this time it's different. Like the first time when Mulligan possesses someone, she takes kind of like full ownership. It helps that the person she's possessing was like half asleep, basically. But then now she's possessing someone who not only does not want to be possessed, but is actively fighting back and kind of knows how to fight back. And so that also, I think, like gave you an opportunity in sound design to make it even more like complex and sort of like mind bendy because it is such like a weird situation where they're literally wrestling for control inside someone's head.
Hmm.
And I just thought you did a really great job. And I remember the first
Thanks.
time I heard it, I was like, yes, this is exact like I had written it on paper, like Mulligan possesses Adam and they wrestle for control and they have this like internal dialogue. And I already had an idea that it would sort of sound like a little bit muffled, like echoey underwater. But then you took that and ran with it and it turned out so well.
I love possession.
Yeah.
It's fun. It's fun to do something different.
Going off of this, for Ghost Inspectors, like, were there any scenes that you had to, like, more carefully design for clarity since it is an audio drama versus a visual show, like a TV show or a film?
Yes. I think we're going to mention this scene a lot, but the final fight in the church, the burning
Yeah.
church with Adam and Oliver and both the ghosts, and it's chaos and there's Christmas ornaments and singing Santas. That scene we actually struggled with a little bit because the blocking of the scene was a little confusing. It made sense in writing, but when you translate
Mhm.
that to sound design, sometimes things get lost or it becomes clear what isn't clear. And so,
Yeah. On paper, it sort of made sense because you see everything that's happening, but once you realize, like, you're in the scene, there's, like, fire, people are, like, talking over each other, there's a lot of things that you like, it really came down to, like, we couldn't hear the footsteps, so we couldn't tell what Mulligan was doing because, like, how are you gonna hear footsteps amongst all that chaos? Unless we made the footsteps, like, really abnormally loud, and then that'd be confusing in a different way.
yeah. So one of the things we had to juggle there was pacing because when you have to segment things out for clarity, so the audience knows this is happening, then this is happening, then this is happening, it can become tedious. And so what we ended up doing was cutting a few extraneous moments here and there that didn't add to clarity or pacing. And then we focused on making every action as distinct as possible. So the shooting of the Christmas tree to the Christmas tree falling and crushing Adam, those had to be like three very distinct stages: shooting, falling, hitting. Same with the Christmas ornaments. Every time I do like an object throw, I'm very careful to do like the whoosh of the action and then the hit and then the effort of the person being hit reacting to it. Because in real life, those things would all kind of blur together. It's the same with like a gunshot. In real life, if you're shooting someone, I hope this doesn't demonetize us. Not that we make money off of advertisement. um, but when you are firing a projectile weapon at someone, in real life, unless you're very, very far away, you would hear the weapon firing, the bullet moving, and the impact all at once because it happens very fast. I like to break that up, very slightly offset all those sounds in design so that the audience can tell who is shooting, who is getting shot. Sometimes you can even tell direction with that. So, same thing with Ned throwing the Christmas ornaments or Adam shooting the gun, just like breaking up the sound design for clarity. That was, I think, the most complicated. I mean, definitely the most complicated scene. And that one was the one I had to work on the most. And it was a ton of fun. It's really, really fun to have those big cathartic fight scenes where everyone's powers come to the front, everyone's skills come to the front, and it's very dramatic. And Adam's yelling and Mulligan's yelling, everyone's yelling. It's great.
Yeah. I also wanted to say, not to get into the writing too much, but I did specifically write that scene to sort of make the sound design a little bit easier because, well, aside from the Christmas tree stuff, but specifically, I wanted Ned to throw Christmas themed things because I thought that would be really clear and fun to play with in sound design. So, for example, like throwing the singing Santa, like when else are you going to get a chance to throw something like that? And it's a very clear, like, okay, he's definitely throwing a singing Santa doll. And
Hmm.
then ornaments have a pretty distinct, like, sort of like crashing sound. It's just clearer than like if I was just like, okay, and then Ned throws like a bunch of stuff. It's like, what is that stuff?
Yeah.
Books, like he can throw books, but if he's only throwing books, then it sort of like kind of blurs together. So I wanted to give you a lot of different things for Ned to potentially throw.
Yeah. Sometimes it's okay if the character is just interacting with stuff, like Sharon digging through her shop to try to find the card reader. That was just me like tossing things in a sound booth, just like a big bucket of stuff. And I was just like
Yeah.
rattling around and making noise. That's in the background. You don't need to worry about that. It's not going to enhance the experience if the audience has to sit there and pick out crystal ball, set of chimes, stack of paper. Like it's not helping. But with the ornament scene, it becomes part of the aesthetic, but also part of the joke. Like, oh, Ned's throwing Christmas ornaments, Ned's throwing jingle bells, Ned throwing a
Yeah.
Santa. It becomes it's funny. It's exciting. So when to use clarity and when to just go, it's just noise. That's also an important part because it helps with how much time you're putting into the project as well. Because clarity takes time.
I also wanted to talk about another scene where sort of clarity was definitely the priority, and it took a couple revisions to get it right. But it was the scene in episode 2 where there's 2 conversations happening at the same time. So Oliver is talking to the medical examiner, and then Ned and Mulligan are having their own background conversation where they're trying to figure out if Oliver can see and hear them. Whenever you have dual conversations, it's tricky because in audio, it's very easy for the conversations to make everything unintelligible. Like if they're talking over each other, people are going to naturally prioritize listening to one conversation versus the other. But then for us, because we wanted it to feel natural, where we were like, well, if Oliver is having a conversation with the ME, he's not going to stop and wait for Ned and Mulligan to talk before he continues speaking, right? And so what ended up happening was we had to sort of adjust the timing so that Oliver and the medical examiner have their conversation, and Ned and Mulligan sort of naturally just watch them. But then we also had Oliver fumble around a lot more while Ned and Mulligan are doing their thing. That way, like, Oliver is still active in the background, and we can either fill that with his own little mutterings or sound effects for him to do. Like, basically, he's like patting his pockets, looking for his business card and stuff like that. And that works because it's not as important for the audience to know exactly what Oliver is doing. We just need to keep him active in the background so there's not like an awkward silence for him and the medical examiner. And shout out to our actors because they also improvise like a good amount of stuff for us to put in the background too. That way it just felt more natural and funny overall.
Speaking of our actors, and this is one of the questions we got. Thank you to everyone who left questions for us. What was your favorite scene to record with the actors?
Definitely that same scene, just because we had so much fun thinking of other ways that Oliver could literally stall for time. Garrett, our actor for Oliver, he kept making stuff up like, oh, where's my business card? Is it in my shoe? And it was sort of out of pocket, so it made me want to laugh aloud. I couldn't because I was in the booth with the actor, so I didn't want to ruin the take. But afterwards, we had like a good, just like, we all just laughed about it after the take. And those are always fun to record. We had Hannah, who played the medical examiner, also improvise a bunch of lines being like super worried about Oliver because he's acting like a little bit crazy and she's just watching all that happen and she has no idea what's going on. But yeah, that one was a lot of fun. Just like any scene where the actors also get to like put in their personal spin on things is really fun.
Yeah, definitely. A little advice for any aspiring editors or sound designers out there. If you can be present for recording sessions for your podcast, whether they are in person or more likely we're over Zoom or remote, it helps everyone involved if there's someone there who's listening with an editor's ear, because they can say, oh, we actually need actors to improvise in this section because they're going to be talking in the background a lot and we just don't have enough of that. Or we need actors to be reacting to getting hit in this scene, so we need a lot of wild efforts, is what we call just like the ooh, oh, those random sounds that you see a lot in a lot of like animation recording BTS and stuff like that. Efforts of people getting hit, efforts of running, efforts of sighing, efforts of yawning. I don't know.
The one I always have actors do is hugging, because that's weirdly one where normally, like, you don't think about making a sound when you hug someone, but it does help in audio to have, like, a small effort. Like, it doesn't have to be, like, a really aggressive, like, hug, although depending on the character, sometimes you do have that.
Like Ned.
Yeah. Yeah, like, for the big group hug scene at the end, we had more animated reactions because Ned is like sort of scooping everyone up, and then like you get the actors reacting to like being squeezed, and then you have Ned just like being really excited to hug people. And yeah, so stuff like that normally you might not think about if you aren't an editor yourself. It's really helpful to have whoever is going to be editing your show be involved in recording at least a little bit.
Yeah. And it also helps them too, because now they have an idea of what you've gotten. So they're already editing ahead of time in their head. They don't have to scrub through like hours and hours of footage. They already have an idea of what they want to use. It's a stylistic choice. Obviously, you don't have to take any of our advice. You can do something completely different. But I like to refer to anime as a reference to what sort of vocal efforts you're going to be wanting to look for in audio drama. Like how in anime, they always make a sound when they bite into something, that kind of like how. That's sort of the level of exaggerated clarity you want to go for, at least for me, in audio drama, because the listener needs as many audio cues as possible to fully understand what's happening in a scene and what the actors are doing. Because if a character isn't making noise, they're gone. They've vanished. If they're not being talked to or talking or doing something else, they just don't exist. You can just lose characters like that. It's not like in a movie where you can just say, and these three characters are in the background and they're nodding and listening, so they're in the scene. If you do that with an audio drama, they're just not there. They just don't exist.
Yeah. Like if you're writing a scene where you're like, well, I want all 5 characters to be there, but 2 of them really don't have that much to say. Honestly, just find a reason for them not to be there. Because otherwise, if they have nothing interesting to contribute to the conversation, they're effectively not in that scene.
Yeah.
Did you have a favorite scene to record?
Definitely any scene where we got more of the cast together in the same space, or like together in the same space, because some of them are recording remotely.
Yeah.
They don't live here. But scenes with any of the quote villainous characters, so any scenes with Roger or scenes with Adam were always a lot of fun because they're sort of exaggerated. They're not quite caricatures, but they are very theatrical, and both of their performers are incredibly talented. And so it really brings the rest of the cast up with them when Adam is giving some like heightened monologue and laughing in a burning church, or when Roger is eating a sandwich in the grossest way possible. And we had to cut 90% of that because it was making me, the editor, queasy. It's just so much fun, and everyone's laughing and having a great time. It really helps too that our cast was just so wonderful, so willing to joke around, but also, get the work done.
Yeah, I think, like, they're so talented that, like, when, like, we get down to business, it's like, okay, we know that everyone's going to deliver really top-notch performances and also sort of, like, bring each other up to, like, match each other's energy too, which I
Mhm.
think is really a great thing when you have people recording at the same time versus if you're just, like, solo recording, which has its merits too.
But you definitely want to be careful when solo recording. If you're recording all your actors separately and actor A does a really heightened, exaggerated performance, and then actor B does a very like mellow baseline performance, those can both be great in different scenarios. But when you put them together, they might not mesh and it makes the scene feel very weird, or at the very
Yeah.
least, it makes the actors sound like they're not talking to each other, they're talking around each other. And you
Mhm.
definitely don't want that.
Yeah. I was also gonna say I really liked recording the scene where Ned finds out that Sharon is a fraud, which
Yes, that was so
again,
fun.
this was like I particularly because we had a little bit of scheduling issues with like actor availability. So this I think was the only scene where we got everyone like Ned, Mulligan, Oliver, Sharon all in a room, a virtual room in some cases, together to record. But it was so important because Ned absolutely had to see what Sharon's imitation of him was in
Yeah.
order to inform his performance. And equally, like, I think Sharon's imitation of Ned was even better because we had Ned actually there for her to imitate. So we were just like falling over laughing also because it's such a ridiculous situation.
It's my favorite thing. It's amazing. It makes me laugh every time.
Yeah,
Um,
it's really great.
Speaking of favorites, Victoria, what was your favorite scene to edit specifically?
I actually, weirdly, I really enjoyed editing the parade scene. Before I started editing it, I was really intimidated because I mean, I wrote it, so I knew this was gonna happen, but I was like, "Oh, sometimes crowd scenes in audio drama can be kinda tricky because how do you get" and it's like a whole parade, like, how do you create, like, an entire full parade? And we had to have the characters, like, in the middle of it, so it's also not like they're in the background, so you can sorta just, like, throw in Walla in the back and, like, sort of play it off that way. We are very grateful to have friends and family who lent their voices to the crowd so that we could have very specific lines, especially when Mulligan is like phasing through people and running through the crowd. We needed like specific lines to come in and out. That was kind of our one scene where we got to like do whatever and like throw in whatever like funny jokes or like one liners that we wanted to. Cause it's like, it's a crowd. Anyone can be saying anything here, and people are having fun at the Halloween parade. And I am really proud of how the, like, phasing through the crowd turned out, which Gino also helped a lot with. On the flip side, I really enjoyed editing conversations between Ned and Mulligan, where it's just kind of like we're just sitting in a conversation with these 2 characters, and those were fun to edit mainly because I'm very fond of these characters, and it was really nice to see how well those scenes turned out, like, definitely a moment where I was like, "Oh, I wrote this, and I felt really good about this scene," but then the way that it came to life was even better. Yeah, and then also, I love any scene with Miss Mittens because
Oh yeah.
my cat voiced the cat in the show, and I was always like, "Oh, it's so cute."
Yeah, I gotta second the parade scene. Some of my favorite moments as a sound designer, especially working as a team of sound designers, is when uh, we come across a problem that just stumps us and we both stand there in front of the computer and just stare at it.
Yeah.
Like, what's not working? Going back and forth, trading the session back and forth, just being like, does this work? Does this work? I think those are really, really fun. In the moment, sometimes they're frustrating, but as an experience overall, I think it emphasizes why it's fun to work as a team on a podcast, on sound design, on a project, because it really brings out the best of everyone. It can bring out the best of everyone, and you can rely on other people's strengths. And sometimes when you're just staring at it going like, I don't know what to do, you can just give it to someone else and they figure it out. And it's great.
Yeah, no, I so agree, like, it's so fun to sort of tackle a problem together. We're both just like, "Okay, how do we make this sound as clear and good as possible?"
The number of times I have just copy pasted sound design that Victoria's done and just used it in my episodes. Because it's good and it works
It
and
also
it's already
helps
done.
create like a cohesive like
Yeah.
sound print for your whole show.
Yeah. And it's already
Yeah.
done. Why would I do it again? The work's done. If there was a scene that I thought was complicated,
Yeah, were there any scenes where you were like, "Why did Victoria write it like this?" No, I'm kidding.
honestly, my experience editing the 7th episode, and if you supported us Indiegogo, you might have already known this, but I did the big church fight scene first
Mhm.
because we needed to get that to our composer Robert fast so he could do a score pass on it. So I did that big scene first, and then I was like, oh, I'm done with the whole episode. Cool. I don't have to worry about that. And then, you know, many months pass and the deadline to submit that episode to Victoria for mastering comes around. I'm gonna go, oh, I actually haven't done most of that episode. I've done one scene. So I was sort of like panic editing the rest of it.
You had a false sense of completion because that is
Yeah.
like, I mean, it is the biggest scene in the whole show. So like getting that done is an accomplishment in and of itself, but the rest of the episode is also pretty long.
I tricked my brain. I lied to myself. And the one scene I struggled with the most was actually the scene with the gas station employee when it's just
Mm.
her talking to Ned from her perspective. So she can't see Ned, she can't hear Ned, but Ned's still in the room, like trying to communicate with her. That actually gave me the most trouble because, like we said before, it's difficult to have a character in a scene when they can't make noise because they're not there. And so, how do you present them as, interacting with the scene and doing stuff when they can't talk, when they can barely make sounds? So that was really challenging. Thankfully, Amanda, who voiced the gas station employee, did a bunch of different takes at different levels of intensity and different emotions. So it made it very easy to like pick and choose what emotion I wanted this character to have at any point in the scene.
Yeah.
And it really, really helped, I think, sell the experience of being an overworked, underpaid, exhausted teenager, realizing that death is not permanent for the first time.
Yeah. I'm surprised actually that you didn't say that the scene where Mulligan gets trapped in a bathroom was really complicated to edit because when
That
I was
one,
writing it, I'm going to be fully honest here. When I was writing it, I was like, I don't want to design this scene.
that's so fair.
I was like, I'm totally going to give this one to Gino because I don't want to do it.
When we work on shows that we haven't written, we're often like, oh, like I never want to do another car chase again. Oh, I never want to do another complicated sound design scene like this. Like if I write a show, I'll never write that. And then we write it every time.
Yeah.
Every time. The first time. But actually that scene wasn't that complicated to sound design because I actually found like the mechanism of the door closing and the trap starting very interesting. But once Mulligan's trapped in there, it's just her performance and some like basic flailing Foley. So it actually wasn't that complicated in the end. I think it was conceptually difficult, but execution wasn't that bad.
Although I guess I did have to design some of that because I got sort of like the second half of the scene where Miss Mittens helps break down the door.
You got most of that scene, honestly.
Yeah. But I think it was like actually like the whole like timing of the mechanism and like the high stakes energy of Mulligan running into the bathroom and finding like a recording of Oliver where I was like, okay, I think Gino will have just like a better idea of how to execute this.
Even then, I did it wrong the first time because I designed Oliver's apartment way bigger than it ever should have been. I was like, this is a
Yeah,
house,
I think you
right?
had Mulligan like running around the whole apartment and
Yeah.
or I guess it's technically a house, but it's still like not a very big house. And I was like, oh, there's not that many rooms for her to check for Oliver in.
Yeah. So I had to really truncate the amount of running Mulligan was doing. And I think it still works.
Yeah,
I think
it
it's
worked.
great.
It turned out great. Do you have any advice for people who want to get into sound design, whether it's for audio dramas specifically or just sound design in general?
Well, first of all, this is my job. I do sound design for a job, but I'm not trained to do it. And so everything I've learned is
What do you
sort
mean
of
you're
by
not
like,
trained?
well, I was never, I never,
You
I
never
never took,
formally got a degree.
I never formally got a degree. I've
Yeah.
never taken like sound design classes, and everything I've learned is sort of by like picking up advice from other people or just like trial by error, trial by fire. Watch things, listen to things, movies you really like, TV shows, podcasts, consume a wide variety of media that uses sound design, and really pay attention to not only like the big sound design moments that you like, but the small sound design moments that people wouldn't pay attention to normally. That's, I think, the best way to get a feel of what you want good sound design to sound like. Something I like to quote, I don't remember who said this, but we are of a generation where we have been consuming media from a very, very early age. So we intrinsically understand what good media is. For the most part. So trust your instincts. There's a ton of really great resources online for learning this stuff, but the best way to do it is just to start. Just sit down, open up a free program like Audition, go to freesound.org, pull a bunch of stuff.
Audacity, I think.
Audacity, not Audition. Audition is not free. It is so expensive. A free program like Audacity, pull stuff from freesound.org, just throw it into the timeline, mess around, move things around, cut it, make it sound weird.
Record your own sound effects. We actually do a lot of Foley for our shows, but even like when I was first getting into sound design, before I even had any like professional microphones or anything, I literally sometimes would record on my phone. And actually, I sometimes still do, because sometimes you can still get away with it. Like iPhone or phone mics, I think are kind of like pretty good nowadays.
Yeah.
For
Consumer
a lot of
recording
things.
technology has gotten very affordable.
Yeah.
Which is nice. Which is very nice.
So sometimes like I'm like, I want a specific door sound and I like how my door sounds. So I'm going to literally just hold up my phone and open and close my door, and that'll be the sound effect that I use for this scene or whatever. So yeah, like you can also record your own stuff and just have fun playing around with like what you can do. You can pitch things, play around with panning, the world is your oyster. That's the great thing about audio, at least like in particular audio only formats, is you can sort of do whatever you want because you're not limited by the restrictions of what you see on screen. And so you can really just have fun. Like, again, like we can do sort of more subjective sound design because we don't have to film all of that and figure out how that looks. We can literally just do it.
Mm-hmm. And it can seem tedious, right? Because a lot of sound design is like footsteps, door open, character sit, character wiggle in a chair, character stand up, character walk away, door open, door close. It can seem tedious, and it can seem pointless also to like when you're just starting out, like, do I have to sound design every single moment? No, you don't have to sound design. There's a lot of podcasts out there that do very minimal sound design, and they're fantastic and they work.
Mm-hmm.
But the more effort you put into it, the more you're going to get out of it. And there's nothing quite like the incredibly satisfying moment of designing a really cool scene or effect and listening to it all the way through and going, I did that. And it sounds so crispy clean and so nice, and it makes my ears happy.
Yeah.
And I think that's worth chasing through thousands of footsteps and thousands of doors, so many doors.
And many hours
and
sitting
very
in front
long
of the computer.
Car scenes where you're like, if anyone knows anything about cars, they'll immediately know this sounds wrong, but I don't know anything about cars, so I'm just going to give it my best guess. And you do
Give
your
yourself
best.
more credit, Gino. I think you do great with everything you design.
Sometimes the engine is a Ford when it's stalling, and then
that's
it's,
okay.
and then it's a Toyota when it's accelerating, and that's fine. I don't know if that's even a correct sentence or not.
Well, thank you so much for listening and watching our last behind the scenes episode. We had so much fun making this show, and we're so glad that we're able to share not only the final product, but also our process with everyone. If you have further questions about the show or how we made it, you can still leave a comment in the in the comments of this episode, or send us a message on our social media. You can find us at Mouse Knight Studios on Tumblr, Blue Sky, and Instagram.
Also, since it's the last time we're probably going to be talking about the show in this like capacity, huge special shout out, thank you to everyone who backed us on Indiegogo, who made the show possible, who made paying all of our actors possible, paying our composer, paying artists to make art for the show. Mm-hmm. That's super important to us as creators. And so we really thank you all for supporting the show. Also, just a big shout out to everyone who helped us out on the show. Vanessa, Matthias, Garrett, Sam, Paige, Michael, Joe Cliff Thompson, Hannah, and Amanda, and all of our additional voices in Walla. Big thank you. You're all amazing. You're all fantastic. You're doing great things. You're going to do more great things. And we can't wait to cheer from the sidelines.
Yeah. And thank you, listeners, for listening, leaving ratings and reviews. We read every single comment that we get, and it always makes us really happy. So, yeah. And on that note, we will catch you all on our next show, whenever or whatever that may be. Bye.